Good morning. I'm going to get this daily devotion done today, a little bit on the early side. Tomorrow, I don't know for sure what time I'll be on, but sometime I'll be on before 9 o'clock or by 9 o'clock, I would guess. Just a little bit different schedule for me, a couple days. But today we look at Numbers 28 through 30. And the chapters 28 and 29 are God's instructions to Moses concerning different offerings. And I mean, there's a bunch of paragraphs, and to start with, it's daily offerings. So each day, the Jewish community, the house of Israel, was to make offerings to God that way. And part of that offering always was retained by the tribe of Levi, the priests, that way as well. So we had the daily offering, and then starting at verse 9, it talked about the Sabbath offering, and it was a reminder for the Israelites then that, to keep the Sabbath day, and it was, one of God's 10 commandments for them. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy, and and so then there were instructions as to, this is the offering that you make to me, each day. And we sometimes, I sometimes think that it's an awful lot of offerings to giving to God, and yes, it is in so many ways, but it's a reminder to me also that God was very actively with and leading these people, and showing them the way, and reminding and teaching them what it was to be. So they had the daily offering. They had the Sabbath offering, which, was once a week, every seventh day. And they had a monthly offering at the beginning of the month, starting in verse 11, she'll present this offering. And so, this was a regular ritual. And then there was the Passover offerings at Passover. And remember, the Passover was an annual celebration that was, celebrated, for several days. And then on the 8th day of the Passover, would have the Passover offering, because they would observe the Passover as God had instructed them, as this remembering their time in Egypt. And we started the season of Lent with Ash Wednesday yesterday, and if you have an opportunity to take part in a Seder meal, a Passover meal at some point in time, I would invite and encourage you to do that, just because it's a reminder of, it's a reenactment, maybe I should say, for those of us who are not Jewish, of their Passover meal. The last one in chapter 28, starting at verse 26, was the offerings for the Feast of Weeks. This was another of the festivals. They had the Passover, the Feast of the Weeks, and then the trumpet sounding, that starts on chapter 29 with the offering at the Feast of the Trumpets. And so, God had, as we've read through, Genesis, Exodus, and Leviticus, God has been showing the people, maybe not so much in Genesis and Exodus, but how it is that they are to remember him and celebrate him. And it is, I think that's something to remember too, that they are celebrating that God is with them, and giving thanks to God that way. So chapter 29 begins with the offering of the trumpets. And then verse 7 of chapter 29, it's the offerings on the Day of Atonement. And atonement, I remember Pastor Norm telling us as confirmation students quite a few years ago that atonement, if you break it up, at one, meant we are at one with God. Our sins are atoned for. And so we are again at one with God, and the offering on the Day of Atonement, that God reminds Moses, and Moses reminds the people that it's on the 10th day of the 7th month, and so it was just the rituals that way. And then on the 10th day of the 7th month was the Day of Atonement, and then on the 15th day of that 7th month was the Feast of the Tabernacle. And so again, these two chapters, 27 or 28 and 29, deal a lot with the offerings, the reminder of maybe not so much the rituals, but this is what you should offer, and this is how you do it, and all of those things that way. And the offerings of the Feast of Tabernacle, this was not just a one-day event, because it talks about the first day, the second day, the third day, the fourth day, the fifth day, the sixth day, and the seventh day, and the eighth day. So I mean, it's it isn't just confined here, but it's taking deliberate time. And I think that as Protestants, we do that with our season of Lent. We take this extra deliberate time to think maybe a little bit more about God. And then we before Christmas we have the season of Advent, and we don't really make quite such a big deal about Advent usually, but it's a time of preparation and a time that we set aside. And I know an awful lot of churches that every Wednesday night now during Lent they'll have special services for Lent, for remembering, and there's a focus on maybe the wounds of Christ, the different signs of the cross, or different scriptures that remind us and tie us in to Jesus' suffering and death on the cross for us during this season that we call Lent. The final chapter we look at today is chapter 30. It's a fairly short chapter, and it says it's the law concerning vows. And it basically is saying, when you give your word, be true to your word, And I think about, in the Old West and in the olden days, you'd make a promise and you'd shake hands on it, and your handshake, your word was good. You didn't have to worry. If someone said, I will do this, you knew that they would do it. If someone said, I will pay you for this, you could count on it, and the trust in a person's vow isn't nearly so much anymore, because people don't honor that. They say, well, I didn't really mean it, or things changed, and but it's nice. I mean, we've all got friends that you can count 100% on. If they say, I'll be there for you, or this or that, that they're going to be there. And we have other people that you just know it is not going to happen. So chapter 30 talks about your vows. He said, this is the thing the Lord commands. If a man makes a vow to the Lord or swears, and he's talking about to the Lord, yes, but also to the individuals. If you make an oath, or you swear an oath to bind himself by some agreement, you shall not break that word. And if if we could do that, if we could live that way, if we could be trustworthy and honor our commitments that way, and it's just, with a commitment too. We make a pledge to do something, and I been a part of building expansions, and you do a fundraiser and somebody will pledge to do this and this, and most of the time you can count on those pledges, but not always. So God is saying to Moses, to us, and everybody, when you make a vow, stick to it. And the first couple verses talks about a man making a vow to God, and then we get into if a woman makes a vow. And it's again a part of this patriarchal society that if a woman makes a vow and her father hears it and says no, well, the woman's vow is nullified. If the woman is married, well, the husband can say no, and it's I don't agree with those things at all, but that, I hope, but it still talks about when we make a vow to be true to our word. And one of the things that I always trust is that God is 100% true to his word, to love and to forgive me and to welcome me into his presence. And I hope you believe that as well.